I can't go on with a suspicious mind. I think there's a conspiracy out there, flat out. I'll share it with you in a second after I talk to you about what is going to be happening with condo financing and FHA. A couple weeks ago, I reported that FHA's mortgagee letter that came out was going to change the face of condo financing, and it would basically eliminate it. Now, this last week, the National Association of Realtors got in FHA's face and said, listen, FHA, you're wrong here. If you do this, you're going to kill off the whole condo financing section of our market, and you're going to destroy the condo financing, and you're going to destroy the ability for borrowers to get loans for condos. FHA, listen, National Association of Realtors, good job for you. So on November 2nd, there's going to be a new mortgagee letter that is going to loosen the previous guidelines that FHA came out with, and we're going to see a change there. So good job, National Association of Realtors. Continue to pay those fees for your education. Continue to pay those fees to be a part of the National Association of Realtors, because it does help. Look what your association did. They went and they fought hard, and they got what they wanted. So let's wait and see on November 2nd what these changes are going to be and how it is going to affect the condo market positively. So I'm really happy to be able to report that today. So now, my problem, my conspiracy here, I'll be brief. I've limited my comments about how I feel about things because I don't want to offend anybody. I don't want to make people feel like, I'm just this, bitter old nasty person. But I got a problem with what's going on right now, and maybe you agree, maybe you don't. It's your choice. I want you to comment about it down in the bottom, or send me an email and tell me, hey, you're crazy, or man, I agree with you, or I never really even thought of that. But here's the deal. We've had this huge, failure of these banks, and, the government, the bank's too big to fail, we have to help them. And so they send billions of dollars in TARP money, our tax money, to these banks. So remember, the bottom of this whole economic situation is the consumer. What drives the economy? It's the consumer's ability to purchase. It's the consumer's ability to get credit to purchase. That's what drives the economy. It's not, industry and manufacturing and all that. If there's nothing to manufacture, there won't be anything to manufacture if the consumer's there not to buy it. So remember, it all starts with you. So keep that in the back of your mind. Now, banks are too big to fail. Money's pumped into them, and there's no stopping it. Now, after all the banks have been saved because they've been too big to fail, then legislation comes down the pipeline. Let's protect the consumer. The poor consumer got really duped here by these huge banks who we just bailed out, by these unscrupulous type of loans, this unchecked risk that they made into the markets for investment purposes. But let's save them. Save the bank. Now let's save the consumer by legislating these laws and rules and regulations that the banks and the brokers and these people have to abide by. But what that does is, if legislation happens that says you have to do this, bank, broker, you have to do this, and basically what you're doing is you're funneling all the consumers back to the brick and mortar bank. And let me get at why that is. Legislation is being, built right now by Barney Frank, who's the chairman of the Senate Finance Committee. Now, he is putting together this, bill that basically is saying they're going to limit the compensation to mortgage brokers. We don't know what that's going to be yet, but the talk is about 1% per transaction. That's all that a mortgage lender can make on a file. Now that's not just the broker; that could be the bank as well. But the bank is not required. If you're a bank, you're not required to tell the consumer or disclose to the consumer what the bank's profit is on the back side of that loan. You may have heard of yield spread premium or rebate pricing for banks. Now, as a broker, we have to disclose all of that information, but a bank does not have to disclose it. So the consumer doesn't know. They walk into a bank and they say, "What's your rate today?" And the bank says, "Oh, well, you can get 5.5% and no fees, or you can get 5.5% and we'll give you a free checking account and a free credit card." Well, fantastic for the bank, but for the consumer, that's a terrible deal, because a broker, they can walk down the street and get 4.75, have all their fees disclosed to them, show them exactly where everything is going, yet the bank doesn't have to disclose. But if you tell the broker you can't make this much money on this transaction, you're limited to 1%, the broker can no longer compete because we can't do business because it costs more than 1% to close a loan. because of all the legislation. So what does that do? It funnels all the borrowers into the big banks. Now, why has the legislation done this? It's so that the big banks can pay back the TARP dollars. And it's all under the banner of we're going to protect the consumer. But what you've done is you've limited the consumer's choice. You've limited their ability to choose what kind of loan product they want. Now, perhaps a borrower wants to use their yield spread premium to pay for their closing costs. I have 2 transactions right now that I'm working on personally where the borrower has elected for a higher rate to credit that yield spread premium to their closing costs, so they don't have to bring so much money to close because they don't have it. If you limit that choice to that borrower, they're not buying a house. If they go to the bank and the bank's not going to do that for them, they're going to keep that money because they don't have to disclose what they make. And this is the problem with legislation that's going on right now to ace out choice for the consumer. This is America. Okay, you can choose what you want to do. And this is the problem that I've got with this legislation that's happening right now is that you limit that choice. You funnel them all into there. The reason why is that if all the consumers go to the big banks can make the money to pay back the TARP dollars. You know, you hear all the time about, healthcare reform. You hear all the time about all these things. These senators and these guys, these Congress people who are brokering these deals. If you've ever heard that term, brokering means that you're going to make something off of it. These legislators have incentives to put these deals together, these laws together, so that they are compensated. There were people, Representative Dodd, he was on a short list of friends of, Countrywide, basically, who received perks and benefits to being in this little short list of selected people who got mortgage loans and rates that were well below what the average consumer could get because he was part of that special friends group. Now, I think this is crazy, but hey, Countrywide was one of those people that failed. The government had to bail out. Well, not necessarily they failed and Bank of America purchased them, but having someone with that power under receiving those kind of benefits, come on, you can't tell me that this whole thing is not interlocked together. So anyway, that's my take on the whole thing. I think it stinks. I think it's completely riddled with, just really unfairness for the consumer, because if you legislate the consumer into forcing them into doing something in their best interest, under the blanket of their best interest, it really isn't. We as consumers are smart people. We're not stupid. We don't need the government to hold our hand to go down the sidewalk to get on a bus. We don't need the government to hold our hand to go down and get a loan. If the broker is doing their job and disclosing correctly, educating the borrower for the transaction that they're doing, a brokered loan is a better loan 10 times out of 10 than an undisclosed, what I think, illegal loan from a brick and mortar bank. So that's my take on the whole thing. Obviously, you can tell I'm fired up about it because I think it's the most completely ridiculous situation that has hit us here in the last probably 6 or 7 years. And obviously, there's other things wrong with the banking system, but this is the major concern right now. You limit the consumer's choice. You take away our freedoms as Americans to make choices about what we want to do. Where do we live? What is this country coming to when we're going to be forced into certain things? So anyway, it's my take on it today. Agree with it, disagree with it. I'd love to hear from you. Check out the links and docs section below. Check out the poll question. I'm going to talk about, the areas of our marketplace here going forward the next couple of days where I think we're going to make an impact in our industry and why the first-time buyer, arena is where I think we should be focusing our time. So again, thanks for your comments and questions. Email me, call me, get back to me. Let me know what you think about this, and I will return your calls, return your emails.